how to change electric guitar strings. This tutorial is mainly for beginner guitarists or anybody who maybe has an electric guitar hanging around the house that is missing a few strings and they'd like to put some strings on it to make it playable. With me today, I have an electric guitar that looks like this, and an electric guitar that looks like this. So there are many different models of guitar that use many different stringing methods. Some guitars have a wang bar right here that require a very specific kind of restringing. But these two kind of guitars I have here today cover a pretty good amount of guitars that are out there. So some parts of the guitar I should go over real quick. This here is the bridge that holds the kind of ball end of the string. Let's see if I can stick it out right here. There we go. That little red thing moving, the ball end. String comes up, and on this bridge comes up and around. It's different for different bridges. Comes up through here, and then comes up to the tuning mechanism, which is composed of the peg, this metal thing. Sorry, right here, and the tuners. Kind of adjust the tuning to tighten the tension or raise the pitch of the note. It is righty-tighty. To loosen the tension or lower the pitch of the note, lefty-loosey. One last thing for guitar parts. So this whole thing right here, everything you see above this white thing is called the headstock. Some utensils you will need to change your guitar strings. It's pretty easy. You will need a pack of strings and some pliers. An optional utensil you can use is a string winder. It looks like this. I personally do not use these. They're not necessary. However, I will show how to use them. A good amount of people like to use these when replacing strings. Now, there are many different kinds of guitar strings. If you are a beginner guitarist, I suggest going into the store, being like, hey, I'm a beginner guitarist, and I'm looking to buy some new strings. And just saying that you're a beginner guitarist, people who work at music stores will kind of ask you more questions and lead you more towards what they believe should be proper for you. Say, asking you what kind of music you play, and then asking what kind of guitar you have, what kind of sounds you may be going for. Typically, however, they will point you towards some pretty basic strings, the cheaper model of strings, and that is good. It's not good to get an expensive set of strings, put them on your guitar, and they don't sound right. So it's kind of nice going through cheaper strings and kind of figuring out what you like. There are many different brands. This is Fender brand strings. Some more popular brands are D'Addario and Ernie Ball brand strings. And like I said, strings is something that could almost require its own video. In fact, there are many YouTube videos out about it that I have pulled up here on my TV. And it's pretty fun to kind of look at different kinds of strings, get different kinds of sounds, can widely change the sound of your guitar. But today, I have a pretty standard pack of strings that I'm going to put on my guitars. Nothing super fancy about these. Yeah, I'll get right into it. So, looking at this guitar here, I broke a string not too long ago. One that should go right here. So I will replace that string. Some guitarists replace all of their strings when they break a string. You can do this if you want. I will probably do this later today, but just for time's sake and showing you kind of more details on how to do this, I will just replace this string and then maybe another string. So if you could see, other times strings break on the bridge right here. This one kind of lost its winding. And slow, if you pull, it'll slowly start to wind apart. A way around this, if you have pliers, just cut this right off. Get rid of this extra string up here, and then you'll have to take this part of the string, sorry you can barely see it, and push it out through the bridge. This way. For this bridge specifically, some bridges will go this way. It's really push it whichever end that this little ball end comes out to. Just so you can get it out of the bridge, and then this is what it looks like. Completely clear of the string. So I'm going to open my new pack of strings. Guitar strings can be packaged in many different ways. Some of them are pretty weird. Some of them have no labeling, and that can be kind of hard to get around. D'Addario that I mentioned is one of those brands that does no labeling or very minimal labeling for their strings. Luckily for Fender, they have a color coding right here to show you which strings go where based on color. So we're replacing the second lowest string, second from the top, which would be the 5th string. Typically, you can see it says first string right here is in blue. This is the first string. Then it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you need to get the 5th string. The 5th string, according to this pack, is Candy Apple Red. When you get Ernie Ball strings, those are actually very conveniently packaged with the gauge right next to them. Oh, gauge is another thing I need to go over. So, if you are a beginner guitarist, it's typically good to try a fairly light gauge of strings. A lot of people who play guitar or work in music stores refer to lighter gauge strings as 9 gauge strings, which the gauge refers to how wide the string is. I believe it's 9 millimeters around. Although I'm not exactly sure on that, to be honest. Nine is not the lightest they go. They can go as low as, I've heard of 7 gauge strings, which is very light. They have 8 gauge strings, and they also have heavier gauge strings. They can go up to 12 gauge. Get this out. So you will typically want to go with a lighter gauge of string because it will be easier on your fingers to press down. Heavier gauge strings really wear on your fingers, and it hurts after a while if you're not used to playing guitar to play guitars with heavier gauge strings. Like I said, 9 is usually where beginners start. Some go lighter than that from there. Some go to 8s, and that's completely fine. It can help with bending the string up to get a specific sound, or just fast playing, having a light hand. Some people prefer to play with heavier gauge strings because of the sound, which is very subjective, and even feel for them. Having the heavier gauge strings does something for the way they play guitar. A lot of the times it's just people are more used to that. Today I'm using 10 gauge strings, which is just with also a very normal gauge of string. 9 and 10 are the most typical gauges of string. It all kind of just depends on how you feel. So here I am for this bridge. Sorry, I'm kind of close. It's a little area to put the string through underneath the bridge, and then the string is going to come out. Now let's get it all the way through here. Get it until this little ball end comes right to the stop right there. Take the string, bring it around the bridge, and then it will eventually go up and through this tuning peg up here. If you have a headstock like this, make sure all of the strings go to the inside like this. Sort of wind to the inside. Do not wind them to the outside. That can create problems sometimes. Sometimes it will not create problems, but it's not good to risk that. Yes, this kind of headstock always go inside. For different kinds of headstocks, it's different. This one has a straight 6 headstock. And for these, you know, it's kind of nice actually getting a guitar like this and typically being able to see like, oh, they go to the inside like this. Restring them that way. Do not try to get a different sound by stringing them on the outside here. It will just create problems. And if you do have a guitar with no strings on it and you don't know which way to string it, you can just look up a picture of the guitar, kind of zoom in on the headstock and see that the string goes in that way, not the other way. So, continuing with this guitar, bringing the string up through the bridge, kind of making sure it's in line, but it doesn't have to be perfectly in line yet. Bring it up, and then put it through this tuning peg right here, the 5th one. Also, do not try to if you have no strings on the guitar, try to mix up tuning pegs or anything like that. Just restring the guitar the way it looks in photos, and if you got it with all 6 strings, restring it the way you got it. So you can put it whichever way through the hole. You can put it, you can put it this way through the hole. That's fine. You can put it this way through the hole, as long as the string comes around to the inside here. I'm actually going to put it through this way. So put it through, kind of grab the end so you don't have to fiddle with it, getting stuck in all these. Pull. And then what I like to do is lean this up. Kind of bend it up so it's out of the way, sticking up. For the lighter gauge strings, as you start to get into these strings, it's going to be harder to do that, and harder to mess around with it. Just a heads up about that. Hold on. Achoo! Sorry, I got a bit of a cold. Now, this is the difficult part, and this is something that a lot of restringing videos neglect. How much slack you're supposed to have down here to get the proper amount of winds around the pegs up here. Because if you have too much slack and then you start winding, you're going to cover the whole peg and have nowhere to go with kind of where the string can go. And then the string kind of goes over itself and you have just too many winds, and it's not a good idea to have that. Typically with a tuning peg, you start with your winds at the top and slowly work your way down the peg. And you should work your way, like I said before, around 2 to 3 winds down the peg. To calculate 2 to 3 winds, this is the difficult part. You kind of have to experiment. There's some videos that talk about a 1.5 peg rule, which is where, say you're replacing the 6th string down here to measure how much slack you're going to need. You measure it out to 1.5 pegs up, which would be right about here. Cut it right there, and then just start winding it up and restringing it. Sorry. So that rule is not universal. And for different guitars, like this guitar, that doesn't work. If I try doing that, I have way too much slack. In fact, I tried to do that earlier, and I had to take the string off because I wound it too many times. So it's actually good to kind of have more winds than you need and work down from there, because if you cut it too short and you only get one wind out of it, can't really go anywhere from there, can't extend the length of your string. So this is where you gotta experiment. Typically, I put the string through the peg right here. You can put it through either way as long as it wraps around to the inside. And I have this sort of shape my hand makes to create some slack in the string. And it's not an exact measurement, and quite frankly, it varies from guitar to guitar, because guitar necks bend in different ways as you restring them. So, you know, you can kind of look at this shape and try to follow this shape. However, I suggest when you do this, start with a lot of slack and work your way down from there. It can be pretty frustrating, and this can take quite a while, but once you get this method down, restringing starts to become second nature for you. It's a very convenient thing to be able to do this fast and not really think about it as a musician. So, I'm sorry I don't have any measurements at this point. This is something that really frustrated me as a beginner guitarist, and I lost a lot of strings doing this. It's just going to take time and practice. In fact, something that may help you when you are restringing your guitar is buying, instead of 1 pack of strings, 3 packs of strings, so that if you make a mistake, you have another string to rely on. This is also why you should have no shame if you want a quick restringing, just taking it to any music store and just being like, can y'all restring this for me? There's no shame in doing that. Heck, I do it today, even to this day, just because, I don't know, sometimes I don't want to do it. A lot of the times I do it myself, though. It can be relaxing for some guitarists who are very used to it. But right now, I have as much slack as I need. The string is bent up, so that creates a little bit of tension up here. I also press my thumb into the neck so that there's a less likelihood of this moving out of place. I kind of press down into the neck and lift up with this hand to create the slack down here, and almost try to imagine pushing it this way, but without moving my hand. Just kind of keep that firm tension on my thumb, lift it up this way. The less slack there is, the less likelihood that your string is going to slip on the tuning peg, which creates tuning issues. It's good to have this be as tight of a process as possible. Which, oh, where did it go? Oh no. I'm sorry. One sec. Oh, there it is. Haha. Which is why you may want one of these. I personally don't use one of these. I just kind of wind this as fast as I can once I start going. But some people prefer to use these and are very good at using these. I quite frankly don't use these because I'm not very good at spinning them. But you put them on the tuning peg, And same thing as if you were tuning it with your hand, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. This just can expedite the process. You can maybe see right here if I have good technique. Kind of slow with it. Some people do this very fast, you see them just turning it super fast. Heck, if you get good at it that way, you are already a few steps ahead of me on tuning or restringing your guitar. So, made one complete wind right here. Oh, I'm sorry, this is kind of hard to see, but I started at the top. I'm starting to work my way down. Do not try not to have the string go over itself. This can also create tuning issues. And try not to have the strings go up, because guitars are made to be restrung in a specific way. It's best to just not mess with that formula. So, it's starting to get tight. Ooh, it's very tight. Loosen it up a little bit. I've got 2 winds, which is good. 2 to 3 winds on these, and I mentioned earlier for the higher strings, you can have a lot of winds on the higher strings, so long as it doesn't get to the bottom of the peg and start to go over itself. Meaning the string is on top of itself, and it needs to continue being on top of itself to keep going. So this one's got a new string. You just gotta tune it up to whatever tuning you have on your guitar. Typically tuning goes from bottom to top: E, A, D, G, B, E. However, there's many different alternative tunings, so that we're not really going to worry about actual tuning in this. Really just getting the tension up so that you have a new string on your guitar. So I will also show how to take off a string and kind of replace another string, if you will. So for that, you can either use your hand or expedite the process, use one of these. I'll use one of these for educational purposes. Lefty-loosey. Loosen up that string. And I like to loosen it to the point to where, keep that in shot. Loosen it to the point to where I can start to kind of unwind it around the peg and pull it out that way. For some guitars, if you want to keep it in perfect condition, or say it's a vintage guitar and the bridge can the metal can very easily wear away, what you may want to do is take your pliers and straighten the string out. Which I don't usually do for this guitar. This guitar, and really every other guitar I have, I just take the ball end out from here. Oops, come on out. This bridge is a little difficult to get the ball end out. There we go. I just take the ball end out. Once I got that out, I yank it right out. Which, guitars that are well built, they can take it. But other guitars, if you want to be delicate with your guitar, I completely understand straightening it out and just being as delicate with your guitar as you can. That's actually probably better to do. That's actually a habit I should probably take up. But so that string's gone. Let's look for the 4th string. So, according to this pack, the 4th string is silver. So, go back to these, look for the little silver ball end. I do apologize. Earlier I said that the 5th string was red. I meant to talk about the little ball end. Of course, all the strings are the same chrome color. Acoustic strings will be bronze. It's important to not put acoustic strings on your electric instrument. The vast majority of electric guitars will not respond well to bronze strings. And this kind of goes into when you go into your music store, being willing to talk with the employees and be like, hey, I'm a beginner guitarist. What should I look for? Because if you just go in as a beginner and don't talk to anybody, and then pick up a pack of strings that you're like, oh, these are the cheapest ones I could find. These seem right. Then you pull them out and they're bronze. It's going to damage your guitar, or there's a very likely chance it will damage your guitar putting them on. So make sure you have silver strings when you pull them out. Factories rarely make mistakes, so you know you won't really have to look out for any bronze strings in your pack of strings. It can also be a little bit difficult to get these strings out. As you can see, they wrap them around themselves with these packs, and I kind of just have to slowly get this one out. I like to keep them all wound up because, well, here, I'll actually show you. If you just unwind them all together, just kind of start unwinding both of them, pulling them through. It's going to take a little while. But basically, if you try to unwind both, then the string is going to come apart. Well, not the string. The circle is going to come apart, and the string's just going to flail and be a thin piece of wire, and you can lose it that way. These strings are very thin, and they can be hard to keep track of. I actually ended up doing that with this. So I separated the strings. I got to keep a close eye on this G string because it's just a thin piece of metal. Very easy to lose on a carpet or something like that. So, like I did before, take this, oops, make sure it goes through the bridge properly. Make sure the ball end completely gets tight on the bridge. Bring it around, and then put it through the tuning peg up here. Ooh, come on, get in there. Hey, thank you. Bend it up here so these two can play with each other, and then that's about enough. That might be a little bit too much slack, but that should be about enough. Like I mentioned before, it's better to have more than less because you can work your way down from there. And I really wish there was a way to measure this. I actually wish that every guitar came with a little manual that kind of talked about how much tension or how much slack you should leave on the lower side to get exact winds around. But I think guitar companies want you to be a bit more hands-on than that, and so they don't really tell you, or they just expect you to know how to do it. There are many aspects of guitar that music stores and guitar players in general just kind of expect you to get with the program on, and it can be kind of difficult at first. The terminology can be very weird. Some certain parts have names that apply to other parts of guitars. Some people call these string trees. I actually prefer to call these string trees, but a string tree can also mean a completely different part of the guitar. can actually show you an example on that guitar right now, but I'm restringing right here. Once you start winding, do not stop, because you need to keep the tension in the guitar. Or in the guitar string, and the guitar, I guess. Also, do not try to replace all of your guitar strings at one time if it has some guitar strings on them. Try to, at the most, take off 2 at a time to keep tension in the neck, because there's a lot of tension pulling it up. And if all the tension is taken out of that, then it's going to bow and go back. And it can be kind of hard to restore that sometimes in certain guitars. So almost done here. As it starts to get lower and lower, I really just lower the string to the neck. Right now I only have, I wish I wasn't hiding it so much. I only have that finger holding the string up to create some tension, and I'm pressing it down right here to keep that tension going. But eventually I take my finger out, keep this finger here, and chew! And now it's all tuned up. Another thing you want to do with your pliers is, once you have all this extra up here, cut it. Some people think it looks cool to have your string up here, and I think it does, personally. I actually had my guitars that way for a while. I poked myself in the eye a couple times doing that, pushing the headstock up and having the string hit me in the eye. It doesn't feel good. It's a piece of metal going in your eye, and it can mess up your vision permanently. So it's good to cut it down here. Be careful though. The little ends that it leaves, as you can see right here, hope you can see right here. This one's even thinner right here. Those are very sharp. A lot of the times you're playing guitar and you reach for that. Sometimes I touch this and it goes right in my thumb. Be careful of that. Some people even like to use the pliers to kind of dull the ends in whatever ways they have, whatever methods. So they dull the ends in that way. For my method of dulling the ends, I kind of just put them up towards the pegs, leave them as far from here as I can, just so when I reach for the tuning peg, I don't accidentally get this in my finger. So that's it for this guitar. Now I'll show you an example on this guitar. I was talking about string trees earlier. This part right here is technically called a string tree too. It's confusing. Just a bit more careful with this one, so I get this string still in a circle, easy to keep on the table over here. So bridges are different on different brands of guitars. This one looks very weird, I imagine, to people who don't play guitar. It's this whole thing right here. String comes up through these little holes right here and over this bridge. You actually initially put them in the back. So I put the string down, comes up through that hole, and then pull over the bridge. There's these little areas right here. The other guitar didn't have this part, but these are called saddles. And the string is going to go over this saddle, up, and then to the tuning peg. It's the same overall thing, just a little, that I was doing on the other guitar, just a little further up to the headstock portion. This is the headstock. Whereas with the other one I was down here, now I'm just up here. Slowly working the string down the peg so that it winds from the top to the bottom. And, ooh, yeah, we got 2 winds out of that. Let it go. When it's tight enough like that, when it's making a note sound, typically means it's tight enough to let go and just tune it from there. That's it for this one.